Well, hello and good morning. Welcome to this webinar from Bamford Media. I'm Martin Bamford. We're talking today all about planning and publishing your client magazine, which is one of the most requested subjects we've had when we started doing these webinars. So one of the things you want to hear about the most. A very warm welcome to this webinar. You have a chat panel on your right-hand side, so feel free to just pop in there and say hello. Let me know if I've got people watching and listening. It's always helpful, and you can hear me and see me, etc. At the bottom, you can enter your questions. So any questions you have, just pop them in there or pop them in the chat, and I'll answer them as I go along or at the end. Either way, I'm very happy with. So let's get straight into this. Firstly, a bit of an introduction to me if you don't know who I am. My name is Martin Bamford. I'm a chartered financial planner. I'm the owner of a financial planning firm, Informed Choice, a joint owner of a financial planning firm, Informed Choice. And I'm also the owner and founder of a marketing agency, Bamford Media. And it's the Bamford Media hat I have on today. And we work with a range of financial planners, wealth managers, people within the financial services sector, also other professional advisors and membership bodies to deliver content marketing work in the main. So our main love is audio marketing. We love podcasting and podcast production, but also written content marketing. So blogging, creating websites, white papers and lead magnets, and publishing magazines. And it's something we've been doing for a long time. It's something we've had a great deal of experience doing, and we get a fantastic response from clients when we create these magazines. So it's something I wanted to cover today and talk about, but also I think something that a lot of people are interested in looking at. So let's start with what we're going to cover in this webinar today. These are the main areas I wanted to go through. As I say, if you have questions, if there's things that I haven't covered that you'd like me to talk about, let me know, and I'm happy to go off at a tangent and cover different bits instead. But firstly, why do it? Why publish a magazine? What are the reasons for doing it, the benefits of doing it? I'll share with you the different ways you can go about planning and publishing a magazine. And I think there's three main ways of doing that with their own pros and cons. The steps you need to consider, and I've drawn up an 8-step process that I think is the right way to go about doing this, certainly in my experience. The steps you need to consider when you're planning and publishing and distributing your magazine and making the most of it, actually getting some value from it. Things to include in each edition. And this is something I often hear from financial planners. They say, well, it'd be lovely to have a client magazine, but what would we talk about? What would we write about? So I'll share with you what we get the best response from when we publish magazines, the sorts of subjects that clients seem to like to read about. A suggested magazine structure. It's sadly not as simple as just slapping all of the articles into a collection of pages and binding it and sending it out. Magazines do come with a fairly formal structure for a reason, because it works. So I'll go through that suggested structure. The mistakes that you need to avoid, the things that we've learned over the years doing this, um, things you can get badly wrong and the impacts it will have and how to avoid making those mistakes. And then some practical ways to get started with the first edition of your magazine. As I say, do use the chat box to say hello as I'm going along. It shouldn't be distract me too much. It's just good to know that people can hear me okay and see the slides and things. So that'd be handy. So let's start with this. Why publish a client magazine? Increasingly these days, Charlie, thank you. Good to know I'm coming through okay. Increasingly these days, we're moving to digital marketing, aren't we? So everything we do seems to be electronic. The website, the blog, the social media marketing, even stuff we do around podcasting and videos, it's all electronic. And I think there's something very powerful. I've covered this in a previous webinar as well. I think there's something very powerful about giving your clients something that's tangible, something they can touch and they can feel, and they can even pass on to someone else. So publishing and printing a magazine, something that's real rather than something that's a collection of electronic bytes somewhere, I think is really powerful. I've referred to this before as zigging when others zag. So if everyone's throwing their budget and their attention into digital marketing, which I love, by the way, I think digital marketing has got huge potential for financial planners, but we shouldn't ignore the opportunities that come from a more traditional approach, especially, and I think this adds weight to the argument, especially when we see the traditional publishing sector in decline. And we see once mighty publications, magazines and newspapers, losing readers, losing circulation numbers, fewer people reading them. I think that strengthens the argument for creating something of our own that's tangible, something printed. as well as its ability to touch and feel the printed magazine, I think it increases your referability. So it's something that can be passed on. It's something real. It's very easy to pass on an email to someone, to press forward and to pass on a marketing email. But because it's so easy, it rarely happens. I think with a printed magazine, actually the ability to give a client, give a friend or a family member or a colleague a copy of the client magazine and say, look, this is from my financial planner. This is what they're about. It's not a sales pitch. It's a collection of stories, and we'll come on to what you can talk about in just a moment. This is what they stand for. This is who they are as people. I think that's incredibly powerful. Done properly, I think it can strengthen both your brand and also your relationships with clients. Strengthening the brand, I think that comes down to the look and the feel and the quality of the publication. I'll come on to talk about that in more detail in a moment. But it's an ability, it's an opportunity. I mean, to replicate your brand standards, your colours, your fonts, your logos, what you stand for as a business, everything about you, and bring it to life because it is that printed, tangible magazine. And in terms of strengthening relationships, this one is such a simple, effective trick. I'm not going to share it just yet. But you might, looking at that copy of that magazine cover on the cover there, you might guess where I'm going to with this. There is an opportunity each time you print an edition of your magazine to strengthen a relationship with one client in particular or one family in particular, but with your clients more broadly. And I will cover that in just a moment. If you've heard this podcast before, heard me speak before, or seen my blogs and things, you'll know that one of my marketing guru heroes is a chap called Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary started his sort of social media marketing career running Wine Library TV in the States, which was a YouTube channel for his father's wine store, liquor store in New Jersey. He now runs a multi-million-dollar marketing agency called Vayner Media. Gary's argument is every business should be like a publisher. So we should think like a media business, regardless of what line of business we're in. It should all be about the content we produce, how we document what we do. And we've got so many opportunities to do that now. And I think the great thing about technology and about the cost and the barriers coming down on technology in particular is that we can do things like this. We can design and we can print magazines. 10 years ago, that would have been a tens of thousands of pounds, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds project. Today, a few £100 and you have a professional quality, completely tailored magazine, which I think is just a wonderful opportunity. We can all be publishers. So those are the reasons why I think we should publish. 3 ways you might go about this. The first option, which I see plenty of financial planners doing, is they buy what I would term as a generic magazine. So a pre-written magazine, and they slap their logo on it. On the back page, they might have a bit of space for contact details. Those go on as well. Now, I think the ones I've seen of this are not necessarily going to be representative of your brand, of who you are as people. They are certainly not going to speak in your own unique voice. And what I mean by that is when a client picks up a copy of that generic magazine that's had your logo slapped on the front, they are going to realize, probably subconsciously, but within seconds, that you did not write that copy. You didn't write that welcome page. The articles they're talking about are not about you. We used to see these generic magazines with some absolutely terrible generic content in. People do not want to know about the end of year tax ISA allowance. They don't want to know about football, and every one of these generic magazines seems to have football articles in, which I think, unless your client bank has got a particular interest in football, I know some financial planners specialize in that market, think very carefully before you pick up generic content and just slap your logo on and pass it off as yours. So option 1, I think, is a bad idea. I think if you're producing any content, but especially a magazine, you need to make sure you're bringing your own voice within it. Now, there is space for generic content and stock content, but I would always argue it's best tailored and best brought into your own voice. Now, a second approach is to capture and create content in-house. So that might be writing the articles, writing the features, and then giving that file of content to a designer and saying, okay, here's the words, maybe here are some photos. Could you please make a magazine out of this? The design, as I'll come on to talk about in just a second, the design aspect of the magazine is not hugely technically challenging. Design software these days is largely drag and drop. I don't want to diminish the value of the design and creative design industry, because there is, a huge amount of professionalism involved in that. But you can drag and drop into some very basic software, which I'll recommend in just a second. Um, but yeah, if you write and capture your own content in house, it comes in your own voice, which is so important, and then design gets done properly. So that's option 2, which is a great option to consider. Option 3 is work with an agency like Bamford Media, like other agencies, but make sure it's a collaborative approach, because I think if you go down that agency route, you don't want to end up right back at the start, which is the generic magazine with your logo slapped on it. Make sure it's a collaborative approach where you're guiding the structure and the content, and maybe in terms of capturing the content, this is something we do with a number of our clients now, is we have content capturing sessions where I'll sit there with a microphone, or we'll speak over Skype, and I'm actually capturing the client's own voice. And then when I write it up in their voice. So it's authentically them who's speaking. So if you get an agency route where they're writing the content for you, they're structuring it, they're designing and just delivering back a published magazine for you, make sure it's on that collaborative basis. Don't just entirely outsource it to get off your desk, because I think it just goes back to that first option, which is the generic lack of voice, very, very dull, not really reflective of your brand. So three options there, I think, for doing it. So how do you do it? And I've got 8 different steps here I think you have to follow. If this is something you want to do, you want to publish your own magazine. Um, Graham, you've just said you've got no sound, and you probably can't hear me telling you you've got no sound. If you restart your browser, if you can't hear me, so let me just type that quickly. Bear with me a second. Please try restarting your browser. That sometimes fixes it. Sorry, so steps to follow. Firstly, start with your goals, your strategic goals. Why are you doing this? Why is it important to publish a magazine? I think it's going back to my first slides. There's all sorts of good reasons, but make sure you've got your own reasons for it. Because without those strategic goals, it's very hard to measure success. It's very hard to understand and keep up, because it is hard work. So you need to have that motivation for doing it. So strategic goals. All financial planning businesses are at different stages of their journey. Now, some it's all about client acquisition. So the focus of your magazine might be about how you generate new clients from scratch. Some more established businesses, their client acquisition has tended to shift towards referrals. So very often at that stage, your magazine might be about how you encourage existing clients and professional contacts to refer. Other, either more established businesses, it might be all about client loyalty. So all about brand presence. So making sure that everything in the magazine is really reflective of your brand. All publishers, all financial planners should make sure their magazine content is reflective of their brand. But make sure you have those strategic goals in mind. So that's the first step. The second step is what's called flat planning. And I love flat planning magazines. So on the right hand side is an example I found on Google Images of a flat plan of a magazine. And all you do is you get a sheet of paper, and I like to do this on a big sort of A3 page. You draw boxes and make sure you do it in pairs, like you can see here, because magazines are printed in 4 pages. I'll come on to talk about that in a moment, but do it in pairs, and then write down what each page is going to cover. And I will come on in just a second to talk about the structure you need to consider for your magazine. But flat planning is a great process. It helps you really visualize what's going to be in this magazine and understand how many pages you're going to need. And that's a big consideration too. And then capture content. By which I mean, once you understand what you want to cover, you actually have to capture that content. And that could be writing short articles, it could be getting photographs, it could be interviewing members of your team. And I'll come on to talk about what you're going to actually cover in the magazine just in the next slide, in fact. But capturing the content, having a central place to put all that content on the server, on your cloud, etc., and put it all in one place, ready for the actual design process. And that's next, designing it. Now, I have a recommendation when it comes to design, and that is an online app called Canva. Canva has some fantastic templates, magazine templates, and it really is drag and drop content in photographs, words, logos, etc. And within a matter of minutes, you can make what look like professionally designed magazine pages with your own content. So do check out canva.com. The software that we use here at Bamford Media for the magazine design process is called Adobe InDesign, which is part of their Creative Cloud suite. And that's a professional level of design software we use here. It gives us a bit more control over things compared to Canva. It means we can output slightly higher quality print files to send to the printer. So you have options. If you want to do it in-house, design your own, use Canva. If you want to outsource and work collaboratively with an agency, you can use something. They'll use something like Adobe InDesign. Proofread. This is so important. Sometimes the act of moving the content from a Word document or a Google Docs into the design file, something goes wrong. So make sure you proofread complete, even if it was perfect the first time when you wrote it in Word, MS Word. Make sure you proofread the print ready files before they go to a printer. And sadly it's easy to make mistakes here. So mistakes do creep into the design process. Proofread, check you're happy with it before it goes to print. And then printing. Once you have those design ready files, you send them off, you upload them on a website, and you get them printed. The one I recommend and the one we use for this most of the time is Instant Prints. They have, and I've noted it down here, they have a product which is their A4 stapled booklets. They're stapled down alongside. We get them printed in 115 gram silk cover. Typically, if we're going for a 32-page magazine, and remember it has to be in multiples of 4 because otherwise it won't fold together and staple together. For 32-page magazine, they charge £372 for 500 copies. So 75p a copy, there and thereabouts, for a 32-page quality printed magazine, I think is good value. And it takes a couple of days for them to send a box, and a box arrives full of these magazines for you. So that's my recommendation for printing them. And then once you've had the box arrive in the office, it's a case of distributing them. So the way we usually approach this is to have a covering letter. Welcome to our client magazine. Here are some of the things we cover. We'd love to hear your feedback. Let us know what you'd like to see in the next one. That's really important. And pop them in a nice envelope with your logo on, etc. Get them out. Make sure also distribution incorporates sending them to prospective new clients. So popping them into your client welcome pack if you have one. Making sure your professional contacts have a few copies of it each time you publish. If you've got local cafes who are prepared to have them in the sort of a newspaper and magazine rack, pop some in there as well, because this isn't going to be a sales brochure. This is going to be a genuine editorial magazine in the main. In our experience, local cafes, restaurants, etc., are happy to take copies of these and have them as a dentist waiting room. You could have them in a dentist waiting room. Lots of ways to distribute them, but certainly to your existing clients, certainly to your existing professional contacts, and then think about locally how you distribute them as well. And then the final step, and I think this one's often overlooked, is make sure you repurpose the content. So you've got your printed magazine, and you've got the design files, print ready files that have gone into printing that magazine. One of the things you can do is you can upload those files to a service on the web. It's a free service called Issue, and it's got I remember spelling of it, ISSUU, I think, .com. And it's effectively, I'll when I do a blog afterwards on bamfordmedia.co.uk, I'll make sure I put links to these things. But Issue, the way it works is you upload the print ready file, and it creates an interactive digital magazine. So, it flips the pages over as you read through it, sort of thing. And you can embed that within your own website. So you can have a page on your website, which is the full edition of the magazine. So that's one way to repurpose it. Don't wait there, though. Don't leave it there. You can also take each individual feature and article and turn it into a blog post. If one of the articles is an interview, for example, maybe that interview was done using a voice recorder, make it into a podcast episode. You could make a video about it. You can make social media posts about each article. Make sure you don't just rest on your laurels and leave it at the being a magazine, printed magazine. Printed magazines have great value, but make sure you repurpose and reformat. Get this content in front of as many different people, as many different channels as you can possibly do. I think that's really important. Right. So, what are you going to write about in your magazine? This is based on our experience of what clients tell us they enjoy reading. And I think that's really important. So, the big one, the thing I think your magazine should be based around is client stories. And we've seen really great success with this, where you make one of your clients or a couple a cover star. So, the main feature in the magazine is all about the client, their life story, and then a little bit about how you've worked with them, how you've made their life better, how you've satisfied their financial planning goals. But make them the cover star. Get some great photos of them and slap that photo on the cover. The article itself might be 5, 6, 7 pages long with photos, with words about them. Make them feel special. And I said earlier, one of the benefits of doing this, one of the reasons for publishing a magazine is to strengthen client relationships. This is powerful, powerful stuff. You make your client a cover star of a magazine, even though it's your own in-house magazine, they will tell their friends and family about it. So make sure you give them extra copies to pass on. Something we like to encourage our clients to do when they produce their magazines is take the photography from the cover or take the cover image and get it printed and framed and give that to the client as well as a bundle of the magazines when they're ready. Make them feel special, and they will feel special, and they'll be very willing to do this. They will love to be featured as the cover star of your magazine. So client stories is absolutely the right place to start. Team profiles, bring members of your team to the front, bring them to life, talk about them, talk about who they are as individuals, because people love people. So always talk about members of your team. Technical features, but approach it carefully. Make sure if you're going to cover technical stuff, do it from a topical and plain English perspective. Don't get too deep and too techy, because I think it's almost a hygiene factor. Financial planners are assumed to have a decent level of technical knowledge. There's no sense, there's no harm in showing that off from time to time. Um, so definitely mention the technical stuff, but make it practical. Use it as a way of reminding clients that you do other stuff. So if you have clients who you manage investments for, they may not realize, because you probably haven't been telling them, that you can also help with their protection needs, their inheritance tax planning needs, their retirement income needs, their care fees planning needs for their elderly parents, all the other great stuff you do. So use technical features as a reminder to clients who have one service from you that actually you're there and ready and capable of delivering other services too. Charity involvement, anything you're doing in the local community is really good to talk about and really good for photos as well. So where you've sponsored events, where you volunteered at things, and it doesn't have to be necessarily business related. Again, make it about you as an individual or about members of your team. If you've got a member of your team who at the weekends goes and volunteers at an animal rescue centre and looks after little puppies or little kittens, oh, what a photo opportunity. What an opportunity to publish that in your magazine. And again, people by people. So bring the personality to the fore on this, and actually, give your clients a bit of a glimpse into the personal life of you and your colleagues. Upcoming events, because it's very handy to know what's going on, particularly locally. So it ties into the local community thing. If you have a local client base, make sure you're talking in your magazine about what's happening in the local community, whether or not you're sponsoring that stuff. So be a useful resource. And then I'd say news in brief, because you're not going to be likely publishing this on a weekly or monthly basis. Don't try and get too topical with the news, but it's handy as a reminder, what's going on in the world of personal finance. So those are the sort of the most appealing types of content you can cover. There's loads more. And I always say this when it comes to content marketing for financial planners: you should never ever be in a position where you run out of ideas for what to include in your content. The simplest way here, and I published a blog about this on bamfordmedia.co.uk this week. The simplest thing to do is to listen to the questions your clients ask and then answer them in the form of content. And the blog I published earlier this week was talking about the 5 big blog topics. So the 5 big questions that clients want to know the answers to before they feel comfortable engaging with you. So you'll never run out of content on this, but those are some things you might want to include. Right, structure. And what we're doing here really is we're learning from the big established magazines. And if you pick up any magazine in newsagents, go down to WH Smith at lunchtime, grab yourself a copy of any magazine in there, you will find in the main that they follow a fairly rigid structure. And they do this for a reason. It's because when we read magazines, it's how we expect to read them, how we expect to find them. And the structure effectively is those 4 areas. So cover pages, and it's not just the front cover, it's the inside front cover, the back cover, and the inside back cover. Those are sort of structurally, they're the front and back of the book. It's important you get those right. The front cover, of course, has to be visually appealing. It has to be very clear about what the magazine is, who it's from, what it's going to cover. Yeah, so big, bold headlines. Make sure it's continuing with your branding. The back's also important. The back's often a good opportunity for a bit of advertising, as long as you do it subtly. And then the inside front cover, inside back cover. There's a reason why the front cover, the back cover, the inside front, the inside back are the most expensive pages for advertisers when you go into magazines, because they're the ones that people actually pick up and read and look at in detail. So it's where advertisers want to be. So cover page is really important. The first section of a magazine is what's called the front of the book. And this is maybe the front 20%, 30% of your magazine. And you've got to cover in there the contents. So give people a really clear guide to what to expect. What's called the impressum. So this is the list of who's publishing the magazine, who's written for it, where to visit the website and find out more. It's a sort of the technical bit. It's usually a small column on the left-hand side of the magazine, but you'll see it if you look for it. The editor's letter. So this is a sort of welcome to the magazine, setting the tone, what we're trying to achieve from doing this, publishing this magazine. That's a one-pager. And then also within the front of the book, you're going to have a series of one-page topics. So keep it short and sweet, make it very readable, use visuals, but keep those short. And that's the front of the book. That's the introduction. You then have what's called the feature well, and that's the main body. It's the largest part of the magazine, and it's where you're going to find your main features. So your client interviews, your client stories, your technical features, your big stories about what you've done in the local community, your sponsorships, your charity work, etc. Mix that up. So have a mix of longer features and shorter features because it helps with the rhythm as someone's reading through it. And also make sure that each feature within there, each set of articles, is visually distinct from the others. So it's clear that when you flick from one page and you start the next article, you're onto a new one. I've seen this done badly before where every single page in the magazine has the same template, the same layout, etc. It's very hard to know when you've stopped and when you finished reading a magazine article. So mix it up a bit. And then finally you have the back of a book, which is the final 10, 20, 30% maybe, and it's the remaining content of the magazine. So typically shorter articles, listings, events, that sort of thing. Keep it short there. That's when we're drawing it to a close, but make sure you're doing it to the same high quality as the feature well, because that means people finish on a high note. They finish with a good feeling about what you've delivered to them. So structurally, that's what we're looking for. Right, mistakes. I mentioned proofing a bit earlier. So making sure that you proof carefully, get multiple pairs of eyes to look through the content before it goes to print. Because as soon as you've shipped it off to the printers, if it's instant print or anyone else, you've missed your opportunity. And if you order 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 copies of this, and only when you start reading through it, you realize there's a mistake, then you're in real trouble. Now, we have a client who is a professional writer, and he's named a law after his surname, and it's called Albert's Law. He's Tim Albert. Sure, he won't mind me mentioning that. And Albert's Law says that you will only ever find the final mistake when the printed copy arrives. So proof as much as you can. Make sure you get the big stuff. Accept that there's going to be the occasional typo. But make sure those are within an acceptable tolerance, because from a brand perspective, you want your clients to think of you as accurate and precise and careful and considered. You don't want to have it littered with mistakes. And there's nothing worse, I know, when reading a magazine article, reading a book, and all you can think about are the typos, the spelling mistakes, the grammatical errors. And you know that a due level of care and attention hasn't been given to making sure that the proofreading was done. So don't go to print without proofing carefully. Quality. And I think this comes down to both design and production. Make sure that you've got quality content. So the written word is quality. It's grammatically accurate, as I say. It's written well, and this is where it pays to work with a professional writer. Being concise, not waffling. Making sure the photos you use within your design are quality images. And there's nothing wrong with using stock images as long as they're relevant and they're not cliched. They're not that sort of one with the sort of the old hands holding the walking stick you always see around care fees planning articles or retirement articles. It's not the old couple sitting next to each other on a park bench somewhere. Don't use cliched images, but use quality royalty-free images to illustrate. And they say a picture paints 1,000 words. That's so right within magazines. Use images. If you can use your own images, even better. Take images of your clients, of your team. If you've got a good quality DSLR camera or mirrorless camera, use that. If not, then modern smartphones now have got fantastic HD cameras in them. You can do a bit of sort of portrait effect on it, make it blurred background, make it really high quality. But go for quality on design and content. Also go for quality on printing. So don't skimp on the paper quality. So the one I mentioned earlier from Instant Print, this 112 gram silk, 115 gram silk, is a nice quality paper. I wouldn't go for anything lighter. I think you can go for 80 grams. Keep it quality, because this is all about reflecting your brand and making sure that the magazine is a reflection of what you stand for, what you're about. And then making sure you get the quantity right. And this can be a bit tricky. I know clients of ours who have printed too many, and actually they didn't have a clear plan for who they were going to send them to. So they thought, yeah, stick a finger in the air, yeah, we need that many. And a few months later, we realised they still have boxes of these things sitting around the office that they have to recycle or left over. The flip side of that is not printing enough. So you get your print run done, and you realise actually you've run out. That's not too problematic because you can just repeat the order and have it a couple of days later. But make sure you get a good idea of who you're going to send it to, how many copies you need before you actually send them out. Right. So how do we actually get started? Definitely start with what are your strategic goals? Why are you doing this? What's your motivation? What are you trying to achieve by publishing your own magazine? The flat planning process, I say I love flat planning. Sketch it out. Decide roughly how big you want to do this. 32 pages is a decent size. It's not too big. It's not too small. It's that Goldilocks zone of magazine size. So flat plan your pages. The way you do that, as I say, is just get a big sheet of paper, draw the boxes out on it, write on each box what you're going to have on those pages. And then as the development process goes on, you might want to re-flat plan it and actually use the sketching process to design roughly how you apportion things to pages, where you want headlines to be, etc., colors for different pages, design ideas. And then the designer, or if you're doing it yourself in Canva, can go into the software and they can replicate that with beautifully designed pages. Find your cover star. I think you can do that nice and early, and then the magazine really hinges around your cover star, because if you've got your cover star, you've got your front page, you've probably got 6 pages within it, you've probably got your back page. So out of 32 pages, that's 8 pages already taken into account. So find your cover star, find a client or a client couple who are willing to appear on the cover to speak to you about their story, about their experience working with you as a financial planner, what they've learned, what they've achieved, why it's been a good experience. And then you really hinge the rest of your copy around and content around your cover star. And I'd also say get your team involved, get their buy-in nice and early. They're going to have ideas about things that you should cover in the magazine. They're going to have questions that clients have been asking them that you can answer in content. And hopefully they're going to volunteer and be one of your features. So you're going to be talking to them about their hobbies, their sports, their interests, etc., as a meet the member of the team type feature. So involve your team nice and early too. I hope that's been useful. It was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of planning and publishing a magazine, but I think I've covered everything in there. If you have any questions, now is your time to pop them in the chat or pop them in the question bits at the bottom. Before I wrap things up, though, a reminder that it's now less than a month to go until the Financial Planner Marketing Summit, which takes place at the Electric Theatre in Guildford on Friday, the 21st of June, 2019. We genuinely have a fantastic lineup of speakers. So I found 10 of the best people I could possibly find to speak to you on that day, that one-day conference, about not just marketing, but about communicating with your clients. And our latest speaker announcement was Johnny Demalek Morgan, who is a professional actor. And he's going to be talking to us about how it's not just what you say, but it's how you say it. So client communication is just as important as all the other marketing stuff we're going to be talking about. As I say, great lineup of speakers. You can meet all of the speakers and you can find out about tickets, fpmsummit.uk or on bamfordmedia.co.uk/FPMS. But I'd love to see you there. I'd love to see a few more people book tickets for that. It's going to be a fantastic day out in Guildford. Lovely venue too, the Electric Theatre. It's a riverside theatre, beautiful auditorium. Small stage, and it's going to be a very intimate feel in terms of meeting these speakers, hearing their best ideas, and taking away some really actionable points from the day too. So do check out fpmsummit.uk if you'd like to come along to that. Our next webinar is at 11 o'clock on Thursday, 6th of June. It's all about how to host your own financial planner webinar. So if you've watched this webinar, or you've watched this webinar, if you've watched previous webinars and you thought, actually, I could apply this to financial planning, I could attract clients. So I'm going to explain how to create your own webinars, how to host them, how to build a funnel around them. And this is a really exciting bit. So it's how to take somebody registering for your webinar and then what to do with them next. So that's coming up in our next webinar on the 6th of June. That is all from me. I haven't had any questions come through, so I'm going to assume I can wrap things up now. Thank you very much for watching. As always, this will go onto our website a bit later today as well as a blog post. it will go onto our YouTube channel, which you can find on YouTube if you search for Bamford Media. Mike, thank you. But thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions you didn't manage to ask within the webinar, drop me a line, martin@bamfordmedia.co.uk. You can find me on Twitter @Martin Bamford, or just generally get in touch. I'm quite easy to find. But thank you so much for watching, and see you next time. Thank you.